I'm Sammy, and I am starting a project called CF in Me, and it's going to be broken down into parts, and each part is going to be a different video. So the very first thing I wanted to do is also let other people know who have CF that you're not alone. It can be very stressful. It can be very exhausting. It can be time consuming. And sadly, not a lot of people know about this disease, and also not a lot of people really understand to the full extent on what it does and how it does affect people. So I would like to teach other people who don't have CF, who don't know what CF is, which is cystic fibrosis, what it is and what it's like. I will also be, I guess, kind of like interviewing friends and family who have gotten to know me, or who has known me my whole life even, and just ask them some basic questions or general questions. If anybody has any specific questions that you want to know, either from me or from a family member of mine, whichever, feel free to ask in the comments. I say you can tweet me them, but I'm still learning how to do all that. I know how to go on Twitter Live, and it doesn't always go up very well. So, with further ado, I am going to start part 1 of CF and Me. And this is just going to be the basics, very basic, simple things. I am going to tell you the exact definition of what cystic fibrosis is. And then I'm going to give you my take on what cystic fibrosis is. According to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, they define cystic fibrosis is a progressive genetic disease that causes persistent lung infections and limits the ability to breathe over time. A defective gene causing a thick and sticky buildup of mucus in the lungs, pancreas, and other organs. In the lungs, the mucus clogs the airways and traps bacteria, leading to infections, extensive lung damage, and eventually respiratory failure. In the pancreas, the mucus prevents the release of digestive enzymes that allow the body to break down food and absorb vital nutrients. Some symptoms, I guess, of having cystic fibrosis, is very salty tasting skin. Like, your skin will taste salty. And it does. Like, I don't know. They actually diagnose a lot of kids. I don't know if they still do it the same way. Actually, they do. It's called a sweat test. And the way my dad, because that's how they found out I had CF, they had me do a sweat test. The way my dad described the sweat test to me is that I was wearing like a bracelet of some sorts. What the bracelet did, I don't know. But basically, he had to get me going and running around and get me up to build up a sweat, so that I guess the bracelet could analyze it or freaking whatever. So that is, I guess, one way to actually diagnose cystic fibrosis. A man ENT who said that more times than not, every cystic fibrosis patient he has encountered, obviously every CF patient he's encountered, has had massive sinus problems. Obviously, if they didn't have the sinus issues, they wouldn't go see him. So, every CF patient he has dealt with has sinus problems. You get you can have chronic sinus infections, which is what I get, and I already had my surgeries for it. So, I don't know how I got from salty skin to sinuses, but there are different ways to go about figuring out if you have it. Second symptom is persistent coughing at times with phlegm, which is the mucus. That when you cough up a loogie, that's mucus or phlegm. Frequent lung infections, including pneumonia or bronchitis. I don't believe I've had bronchitis, but I do get pneumonia an awful lot. Next, wheezing or shortness of breath. You usually don't have an issue with this unless I'm really sick. Poor growth or weight gain in spite of good appetite. I don't have good appetite, but I always have poor growth and weight gain. Frequent greasy, bulky stools or difficulty with bowel movements, which would be like it's really like you get constipated easily, or sometimes you just have the nastiest craps ever. I'm trying really hard not to cuss. And then for men, there's infertility, meaning they have an extremely low sperm count, and it's extremely difficult for them to produce sperm and have offspring. It also causes other diseases. When I say that it causes other diseases, you might have CF, but because of your CF, you might have something else. For instance, I have cirrhosis, but because of my CF, I have cirrhosis. So if I didn't have the CF, I wouldn't have the cirrhosis. And it's just things like that. And I'll go more into that in part 2, I do believe. I go more into that. Yeah. So, also a good way for parents to be very cautious about whether they are going to have a child with cystic fibrosis or not is to get screened before getting pregnant. I know I have the CF gene. Obviously, I have cystic fibrosis. But with cystic fibrosis, seeing how it is a genetic disease, it needs to come from both the mother and the father. So, my mother had the CF gene and my dad had the CF gene, which means I got CF. Now, when both parties have the CF gene, I think there's 1 in 4 chances that their child will end up with cystic fibrosis. And I was just that lucky one. But it's, there's definitely ways you can tell if you have CF or the CF gene and kind of do some preventative measures to assure that your child does not have cystic fibrosis, or that you do not get a child with cystic fibrosis. Also, I believe there are tests that you can do while being pregnant to see if your child will have cystic fibrosis. I think it goes for like Down syndrome and a bunch of other things as well. So, with that being said, I always, if there's not like a CF that runs in your in your family timeline ever, I don't know if I would say it's a hugest, you need to go get tested and see if you have the CF gene right this second. I say this because it's not, I'm pretty sure it's more common than it was. And I'm about to look this up real quick because I don't know the statistics on this, but let's find out, shall we? That's not how you spell people, Samantha. Sorry. Okay. It says, to have cystic fibrosis, a person must inherit 2 copies of the defective gene, CF gene, 1 copy from each parent. Approximately 30,000 people in the United States have cystic fibrosis, and an additional 10 million more, or about 1 in every 31 Americans, are carriers of the defective CF gene, but do not have the disease. So you don't have to have CF to have the CF gene. Meaning, just because you might not be sick with CF yourself doesn't mean that you're not carrying the gene, and it doesn't mean that your partner is not carrying the gene. And if you are going to have children, and you know you're going to have children, you're like, if it's planned, you might want to consider getting checked for it. So yeah, in the U.S., about 30,000 people have cystic fibrosis. It's not a huge, hugely common disease. It is a little bit more rare. We can see how many people in the world have CF. Let's do that one. Because 30,000 people, I'm sure this number has changed probably a lot, but up there they are saying approximately. So according to the Cystic Fibrosis Patient Registry in the United States, more than 30,000 people are living with cystic fibrosis. More than 70,000 worldwide. Approximately 1,000 new cases of CF are diagnosed each year. More than 70% of people with CF are diagnosed by the age of 2. That is not always the case. That is why it says more than 75% of the time it is. Again, not always the case. There are cases out there. I was just trying to make sure I've read everything off correctly, and I shared all the information I just found. There are cases of people that live up till they're like 20 and don't even know they have CF. It's very, very rare. That's not common at all. By the time you're about 2-ish, I want to say, I haven't even met some people who got diagnosed at like 4 or 5. But in your toddler years is generally when you're getting diagnosed, or around then. But again, it's not uncommon because CF is so complex and complicated. Each case is different. Everybody's case is different. You could have a sister with CF, and you both have a different gene. Like, you both have different experiences. There you go. I was trying to figure out the word. Just because one CF person has a lot of lung problems, the next CF person might have a lot of digestive problems. For the longest time, I only had massive digestive and intestinal problems. Then I got older and I became to have a lot more respiratory problems. Now I'm falling into the category where I just have both of them. So it is a very progressive disease, and as of right now, there is no cure for it. They are still working on it, I'm sure. But until then, I just live with it, and I will share more about my life with it in the next episode of CF and Me. So, thank you for watching. Again, if you have any questions for me specifically, or if you have any questions for my husband or someone who's known me for a very long time, like, for an example, like, how do you deal with her having CF? Which I'm pretty sure is one of the questions I have, but I'm not sure. 100%. I lost that paper, so I have to remake all my questions. So, I would love to thank you for watching this, especially if you watched it all the way through. Again, if you have any questions for me or for anyone else that knows me and is close to me, please leave the questions in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. If I cannot answer a question, or if somebody else I'm with or know cannot answer the question, I will tell you that I don't know, because I don't want to sit here and throw some false information at you, because that's wrong, and that's the opposite of giving you awareness. That's just lying to you. So, yes, thank you for watching this long. Have a good day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. And I will talk to you guys later. Hopefully you stick around to watch part 2 of CF and Me. Thanks, guys. Bye.